الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Center at New York University podcast, coming to you straight from the heart of New York City. We're building an amazing Muslim community here at ICNYU where everyone is welcomed and respected no matter where you're from or where you're at. This is the place to be. So open your ears and your heart and come along with us on another life-changing journey. Bismillah.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا وقال تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما صدق الله العظيم. It comes in a narration one day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam walked in his blessed masjid, and when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam walks in the masjid, he sees a man sitting in the corner of the masjid. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam sees this man, he approaches this man and says to him, مَا لِي أَرَاكَ فِي غَيْرِ وَقْتِ الصَّلَاةِ, that what are you doing at this time of the day in the masjid? It was an awkward time. Normally, at that time, people were out working, spending time with family. And this man was by himself in the masjid, so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asks him, why are you here? And as this man heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ask a question, he responds to him saying that I owe a lot of people a lot of money. I owe people a lot of money. And anxiety cannot leave me, and debt has overwhelmed me, and I'm constantly stressed. I cannot move, I cannot navigate, I am overwhelmed. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam teaches this man a dua that if one were to recite it, it will elevate the stresses and the difficulties, that it will bring about faraj, the openness, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow you to overcome any difficulty that you ever face. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam noticed that someone was in need. And if it wasn't for the caring heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no one would have ever noticed that this man was going through some difficulty. The idea of walking with a caring heart to an extent that you can walk amongst people and notice that someone is going through some level of difficulty and stop and ask, what is wrong? How can I help you? How can I be a means of service to you? And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did that amongst a large community. That his concern was beyond his family. his concern was beyond his community. It comes in another narration that one day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was walking with his companions. And as he was walking with his companions, a camel was rushing towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these companions were like, what do we do? This huge animal is running straight towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as this camel reaches to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it starts rubbing the chest of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the companions say, Wallahi, that we saw tears coming out of the camel's eyes. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asks, who amongst you owns this camel? For you, O Master, what are you doing to this camel? You're giving it more than it can bear. You're giving it more than it can handle. And this animal knew that in that very man, in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a caring heart. That forget about a community, forget about his family, even animals knew that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a caring heart. And beyond his family, beyond animals, beyond his community, there comes in another narration that one day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given khutbah. He was giving a sermon. And as he was giving the sermon, the companions start to hear this wailing sound. They start to hear this crying sound. And at that moment, none of the companions were crying, none of the companions were tearing up. And so these companions start to go search for this wailing sound. And as they were searching, they eventually catch up or reach at this tree trunk. And they notice that the wailing sound is coming from that tree trunk. And that tree trunk was the very spot where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would previously give his khutbah before he moved to another location. And that tree trunk was grieving over the loss of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That tree trunk was crying that it cannot be attached to the greatest human being to ever walk this planet. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what does he do in response? What does he do in response to that tree trunk crying? He, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, walks down from his location and walks towards that tree trunk and gives that tree trunk a huge hug. And he doesn't leave that tree trunk till that tree trunk is satisfied, till that tree trunk is calm. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told this tree trunk that, are you satisfied that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place you next to me in Jannah? It shows you how far Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was willing to go. That one of the worst things that you and I can do, doesn't matter if you're a CEO, doesn't matter if you're an imam, doesn't matter if you're a doctor, doesn't matter what kind of status you have in this world. One of the worst things that you and I can do as individuals is neglect someone else's pain. That when someone is crying next to you with no tears, that someone is yelling with no voice, and you and I are dismissive of that pain. You and I are careless of such difficulties that someone else is experiencing. One of the worst things that you and I can do. And in response, rather giving comfort, we make it a debate. We make it about us. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never dismissed any pain anyone was going through. But rather Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would ask What is going on? What has happened to you? And a lot of times what happens is that a person falls more into difficulty because they were calling out for help but no one noticed them. They were telling people around them that they're suffering, that they're going through struggles. But you and I didn't notice that struggle. It can be a spouse when they're trying to send out signals, messages, but you and I don't stop for a moment to understand what are those signals, what are those messages. Can everyone please move up closer, please, and move towards the left? We're expecting more people to show up, inshallah. And that's what made Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam so special. That without saying a word, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was able to detect someone else's pain. But that intuition only comes from a caring heart. It doesn't come from our degree. It doesn't come from the skills that we learn in our work. It comes from a place of love. One day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked his wife Aisha radiallahu anha he told Aisha radiallahu anha that I know when you are upset. And she responds to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how do you know when I'm upset? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that when you are upset, you say the words Ibrahim's Lord. But when you are happy, when you are overjoyed, you say Muhammad's Lord. And she responds to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that I do not put away but your name. There's nothing against you, but it is only your name I put aside. But the idea that he was able to sense her pain, the idea that he was able to sense that she was struggling through her language, the idea that he was able to understand that she was frustrated, that he did not internalize that pain, but rather he addressed and asked her what was wrong. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. So my dear respected brothers and sisters, pay attention to those around us. Pay attention to words. Pay attention to emotions. And what this all means is that eliminate any distractions that we have. When someone comes to us talking about some difficulty, talking about a struggle that they're going through, give them your undivided attention. Because when you're distracted by something else, you're not able to comprehend what that person is going through. You're not able to comprehend what that person needs in that certain time. And when you are paying attention, you are not dismissive. You are attentive. You are caring. You are loving. And you're trying your best to bring about support. You're trying your best to bring about change. You're trying your best to bring about motivation. And by eliminating all these distractions, this means that we have to be better listeners. And as you are listening, it is not our job to prepare an answer, because sometimes some people just want to let things out, to go towards someone that can just listen to them and just acknowledge their pain. And for those who are struggling, never bottle up your feelings, never bottle up your emotions. Even in a marriage, when one spouse is upset at the other, don't bottle up your emotions. The idea that being silent is not an act of maturity. The idea that I won't tell my spouse what is going on in my life, what I'm struggling with, is not an act of maturity. Because one day, those emotions are going to explode. One day, those emotions are going to be let out. And as a community, the worst things that we can do is that when we see a community member that is struggling, that comes to us to talk about their struggles, give them an ear to listen to talk to. Give them your support. Tell them that you acknowledge their pain. Tell them that you are there for them. Tell them that you are there to support them. Because it is not easy for someone to be vulnerable. It is not easy for someone that is struggling to go to let their emotions out to some other person. And finally, the last advice that I want to give from the prophetic tradition of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that never shy away from the act of showing affection, from the act of showing love. The idea of showing love should not be considered demeaning or taboo. To give people a sense of belonging is necessary when one is searching for a meaning of life. This is why when Aisha radiallahu anha would come in the house, or Fatima radiallahu anha would come in the house, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would get up from the place he was sitting and go towards Fatima radiallahu anha and kiss her hand. And he would tell Fatima radiallahu anha that please sit on the location that I was sitting. Please sit where I was sitting. And the Sahabas would notice that the Prophet ﷺ would be radiant with his affection towards his family. And Aisha radiallahu anha says that before the Prophet ﷺ would leave the house to go to the masjid, she would say, قالت كان يقبل ما شاني وجهي. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not leave the house without going to his wife Aisha radiallahu anha and kiss her from wherever he wanted on her face. And it was out of her modesty that she did not give explicit details how he would kiss her, but rather she gave details that before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would leave his house, he would make sure that he showed affection to his family. He would make sure that he would show affection to his wife, that he would tell his wife before he would leave that he loves her. He would go out of his way to make sure that his daughters knew that he loved them. And we have a long list of hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would hug Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, that he would go sit next to Mu'adh ibn Jabal and place his hand on the thigh of Mu'adh ibn Jabal and would tell him that, oh Mu'adh, I love you. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not make the act of showing affection, the act of physical touch, a demeaning act or a taboo act. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a man who would show affection to everyone around him. So my dear respected brothers and sisters, when someone is coming to us that is struggling, make sure you give them the support that they need. Make sure that you are there for them. Make sure you are their shoulder that they can lean on, that their ear that they can talk to. And my dear respected brothers and sisters, take some time out of your day. Learn how the Prophet ﷺ would show love and affection, how he would help someone that was in need, that was struggling. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات وبارك على محمد وأزواجه وذريته. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أرحم أمتي بأمتي أبو بكر وأشدهم في أمر الله عمر وأصدقهم حياء عثمان وأقضاهم علي وفاطمة سيدة نساء أهل الجنة، والحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة، وحمزة أسد الله وأسد رسوله رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين. اللهم اغفر العباس وولده مغفرة ظاهرة وباطلة لا تغادر ذنبه. الله في أصحابي لا تتخذوهم غرضا من بعدي، فمن أحبهم فبحبي أحبهم، ومن أبغضهم فببغضي أبغضهم، وخير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. أقيموا الصلاة.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you're inspired by the work that we're doing at the IC and want to help keep it going, subscribe to our podcasts, follow us on social media, donate to help support us at icnyu.org, and most importantly, keep us in your continued du'as. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.